Now we're into the hard hitters, the guys who really are going to just tell you what's up with religion and science. We're going to start with the founder of the term agnosticism, which is not atheism. Excellent. That's just it. And I would argue that among the possible worldviews we can have, monotheism, monism, like Hinduism or Buddhism, that agnosticism is the most scientific standpoint to take until science can actually prove that God doesn't exist. Then I'm going to say he's quite right. And of course, he becomes a great hero and champion of Darwinism, a preacher of science, if you will. And maybe the baddest boy of all is him. Whoa. Marx actually didn't hate religion. A lot of people think he did. He just thought it's going to wither away with science, and you didn't have to fight religion. You just had to watch it slowly dwindle. What was his view, though, of religion? And now we have different from substantive approaches, which believe there is a sacred in our heads, like Eliade thought. This is now an analysis from sociology, a scientist looking at religion and seeing for a fact that religion functions to oppress the lower classes and for the benefit of the upper classes. Does that sound fair? Anybody not like it? I think he's right about it, but I like to hear a disagreement. If we think of the Hindu caste system, we've got our answer. Brahmins at the top, and like this, and then you've got the servants and the outcasts, and that religion is legitimating that kind of system. So there's Marx. Now, in contrast to Marx, Max Weber here says, wait a minute, Marx. It's not just that it's going to dwindle, wither away, this religion, and it's not that it's just exploitative. And then he did his study of Martin Luther and Mahatma Gandhi and found that actually religious figures shake up whole societies and far from stifling evolution, promotes evolution. So you get German literature with Martin Luther. With Muhammad, you get Arabic literature. So religion shakes things up. He sees the baby and not just the bathwater of religion, but he sees the bathwater too. I think none of us can fail to see the bathwater. And then we see scientific ethics emerging. John Stuart Mill decide that it's not about God's commandment, good or evil, abortion, let's say. If abortion is useful, and if not having abortion makes for unhappiness, then abortion should be permitted. A usefulness ethic that comes from science, no longer based on God's command, but how we can be the happiest in our society. And then, if it's not Marx, it's this bad boy, Friedrich Nietzsche. A lot of my students say he looks mad, and he is. So he certainly went mad if he wasn't when he was still writing. But there you go. What does he say? Where has God gone? We have killed him, you and I. And he means science has killed God. And if God is now dead, then who becomes God? Could it be me? Marx is looking at the mass world. Nietzsche is looking as an existentialist at the individual consciousness. And then he says, in the absence of God, you are now the king of the universe. In fact, if you follow the old religions, you are a slave to long dead men. Sadly not so many women. Ladies, sorry about that. They are mostly, that's why you can blame the men too. And so to be a free person, you need to cast off your religious shackles. Anybody have a problem with that? Did he make his case, this kind of scientific thinker about religion? All right then. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. for him, but everybody else has these weird fantasies, don't they? Sleeping with your mom and killing dad. Did anybody ever, I asked my students, anybody ever feel like wanting to do that ever? No. I hope I haven't oversimplified him. I'm not a psychologist. But he's got a point. Religion does serve to fuel infantile delusions. I mean, it can happen. I have an ex-mother-in-law who was stolen as a kid and put in an orphanage by her father, stolen back by her mother. All she had was God in that orphanage, and that's all she can think about. There's nothing that happens. Everything is, well, really Missouri Synod Lutheran, actually. It's not even the Catholics in her book, because the Lutheran Church saved her life. And so she clings to that with every fiber of her, well, not as maturely developed self. And so I think he's right. For some people, religion is a crutch to get along with, and I have no problem with that. But now, we've got Eric Erickson here arguing no, just as Max Weber argued against Marx. Wait a minute, Freud. It's not that simple. In fact, we can see stages of psychological development, right, Steve, in human beings. Some don't make it through them all. And in each case, there's an oppositional possibility, working hard versus feeling inferior to other people, for example, starting with basic trust and mistrust. This takes place at the parent-child level. But if you get to the top of integrity, generativity, and so forth, then you can actually be a powerful figure for reforming society. And so, yes, he was who wrote on Martin Luther and Gandhi. I got to correct that about Weber. It's Eric Erickson who saw these culture heroes emerge from religion and change whole societies. Then we get to these very bad boys, if you're religious. They don't like it. E.O. Wilson says, hey, hello, religion is biologically based. And he studied bugs as an entomologist, and he found they have rituals, kind of an ethic. And then he found that just like we have popes and Dalai Lamas, bugs have termite and bee queens. Whoa, centralized authority figures. So it's biology, and then Richard Dawkins, probably the most famous proponent of atheism, says no, it's genetic. And religion is a vestigial part of your genetic structure, just like your appendix in your body. So they both say, yeah, it's there, but we're a little smarter than bugs, and we can transcend our biology and our genetics. Yes, sir?
They're saying, or he says it's genetic. Now, if you take somebody and you isolate them by themselves, can you prove that it's genetics that they're automatically going to set themselves to worship a higher being? Or is it something that's learned through years of ancestry?
Good question. I'm going to have a slide on the God gene. And you can measure some of these things in the temporal lobes of people. They can find that very religious people have much more activity in their brain. But can you rephrase that one more time? I'm not sure I'm answering that.
They say, like, it's genetics. Well, if you isolate somebody, basically solitary confinement and that, will they, without any knowledge of religion, will they eventually figure out and worship a higher being and create their own form of religion? Or, having no knowledge of it, will it never existed?
It would be an awful experiment to do to a person. And I don't know, that's like a Joseph Mengele study, right? Sounds kind of bad. But I don't have my clip handy, but I like to show it in class of the dog woman of the Ukraine who was not raised really by her parents, but rather by the dogs in the barn. And she couldn't speak, she barked, she jumps, runs on all fours, and was socially, or conditioned and socialized by dogs. Now, if dogs, I don't know if they taught her, in the great canine in the sky, but they do have rituals and ethics and things like that. So I might say, I don't know. How about that? There's just no way to know, really. But I'll toss that in there. Now, this, though, is where science is really rebelling against its parents, those religions, those annoying old religions with their superstitions. But it can't pull itself away from using religious language to describe the mysterious elements it too wants to know about. And so we have here the God particle. Whoa, why would they call it the God particle? Does that make any sense unless they're still clinging to an idea of an all-embracing, omnipotent, final power of the universe? And then what's different between that and this God particle? The God gene we just talked about? They have found, now don't ask me which rung of the DNA chain, but acetylcholine and something else interacts to make, so they say. I'm not a scientist. If anyone wants to fill in more, that's fine. But they've discovered the God gene, and then they call it the God gene. Then scientists are studying the old religious practices. So there's your brain on nothing or TV, and then there's your brain while meditating. That's your brain on prayer. That's your brain where all the strange voices come from and so forth. Right? When you talk, does anyone talk to themselves? Uh-oh. Is it just me? Oh, I shouldn't have said that. Sorry. Uh-oh, I'm revealing too much. So they've kind of mapped out where people hear voices. In fact, a guy invented the God helmet. It's a great clip. Google it. You wear the helmet, and you feel a presence, a divine, some say divine presence. Others just feel a person's in the room, when in fact, it's an electromagnetic helmet that does whatever it does to the brain that I don't know the brain that well enough to tell you more about it. Now, we're at the point with Peter Berger, and I'm going to try to drive it home on science being a religion. He discovered this. Not only is religion glue for societies, but this is his pattern for how religions evolve and start. So, local reality, let's just say the Buddha. He has his insight in his meditation. Then he externalizes it to others. And then they say, wow, that's kind of cool, Buddha. Could be Jesus, could be Muhammad, anybody. And then an organization forms socially for that original insight. It's internalized by later generations, and then new realities come out of that. So we can think of Jesus externalizes a teaching, creates a church, and then centuries later, Sunday school kids are internalizing that, and out of that you get people like Jim Jones who externalize a new reality. Now, not a nice reality, and so it creates a sacred canopy for people. And I know a lot of people increasingly who see science as such a sacred canopy, not in the sense of Jehovah, but as their primary reference point, and where they feel safe and secure is in talking about science and thinking science. And is that true for our scientists or not? Is science a sacred canopy at all? For anybody in here? It is for me. I like science. I'm not trashing science. I'm a big fan of science. I just think it has a long way to go to absorb the old religions.